Good evening, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Job. We're now in chapter 37, and it begins this way. At this also, this really means moreover, and basically it tells you it's because of what happened earlier, right? Because of what happened earlier, or what was said earlier. It continues from where Elihu has ended in the previous chapter, and he is describing the greatness of God, who can stand out towards God, and Job got it all wrong because man is not qualified to contend with God. That was where we ended in chapter 36. And so he says, because of this, my heart trembles and leaps from its place. So this is a very, how would you say, a very imagery kind of expression that really puts a person at awe, right? It puts a person at awe. Awe of what? Awe of greatness of God. The entire discourse of Elihu rebuking the three friends, rebuking Job, is really to let them know that at the end of the day, God is almighty. He is the maker. And how can man, however righteous man may be, contend with God and challenge him on why he did what he did, particularly Job, who says that he did nothing wrong, and why is he experiencing this? And because man does not have the capacity to really know everything, then why challenge God? And he actually puts out to us that God is not someone like man that you can fight with. And so he continues in verse 2. Listen closely to the thunder of his voice and the rumbling that goes forth from the mouth. Now, I think you can see that this idea of thunder, the word thunder here doesn't really mean thunder at all. It's not the idea of thunder, it's the idea of a raging sound. It's like a roar, right? A roar of his voice. It's coming out with fury. And then it says here that the and the rumbling, and now this idea of rumbling uh actually means the sound, right? The sound, so it doesn't mean rumbling. That, well, the rumbling that, and is actually the words, the moaning, the whisper, the sighing, the sound that comes out from his mouth. I think that would be a good way of expressing. And so this idea here is listen closely. This is a command, right? Here, uh, and this is really telling you all, hear and hear properly. It's telling Job, it's telling the three friends, it's telling everybody else around that who's listening, listen to God's voice, right? The maker. Basically, that's how they describe God. Under the whole heaven, he lets it loose, and his lightning travels to the ends of the earth. And this is really looking at the natural phenomena, at the phenomena of the light, it's called lightning, and the sound, which that is why the translator used the word thunder. It's a roar in the air, and the lightning, and hereby gives us the imagery of the storm. After it, a voice roars. He thunders with his majestic voice. He does not restrain the lightning when his voice is heard. Basically, what he is describing is, first, you see in the sky when it is dark with storm clouds, then you will see the lightning, lightning flashes. And with the lightning flash, you will hear the thunder roar, which is described as a sound. And this is describing God is speaking. Right? It's really using the imagery, and throughout history, lightning and thunder and storm really puts the fear of God in man, because it is something that man cannot control. Verse 5, it says, God thunders wondrously with his voice. He does great things which we do not comprehend. Comprehend here is the word know. And in this case, the idea of know that we do not know really talks about we do not perceive. And understand is a good word. So man does not understand the storm, how the lightning works, that's how ancient man speaks. And this is actually not talking about science. So we're not talking about physicists sitting down discussing the storm. This is really common man looking at life's problems and looking up, seeing God in the storm, the lightning and the thunder. And these are things that you just can't say, oh, this is exactly what's happening. Elihu continues to describe the snow. So for the snow, he says, fall onto the earth, and to the downpour and the rain, be strong, be mighty. So you find that snow, rain, and both can come down in a mighty way. And those of you who may not know, snow is actually in the cold weather. Uh, it appears as snow. In the warm weather, it appears as rain. And both are the condensation that is in the air. And when there's lots of it coming down, you call it a downpour or a heavy rainstorm or a snowstorm. So either way, this is the condensation that has appeared in the atmosphere. He seals the hand of every person so that all people may know his work. And essentially, you would see that God signs his work. And Elihu is using nature and using the description of the storm, the description of the snow, the rain, the lightning, the thunder, to describe God. His signature is there so that every man may know God in his work. The animal goes into its lair and remains in its den. So when all these things happen, everybody goes to hide, including the animal. From the south comes the storm. Now, this idea of south, we need to actually deal with it a little bit. In verse 9, it says here, from the south comes a storm, and south, well, in this case, south uh, does not mean south. That's why I'm struggling with this. The word south doesn't mean south. Um, this word here, it actually means the room, the chamber, right? The chamber or the inner chamber or inner room. That would be how the word is described. So from the inner room comes the storm, which means that suddenly, without knowing where it comes, the storm comes. And then it says the cold weather, or from the north wind, the cold. Now, we need to actually depict something here. The idea of cold is kara. This is cold. This is the cold front. And this word here is really not the, well, it says it can be translated as a north wind. Uh, so literally, it is a north wind, but in many translations, it's best left in its original word. The matzarim, actually, that's what it is. The matzarim, and this is the north. I guess you can say that the north wind, that's the wind that's blowing from the north, brings the cold front. And from the breath of God, ice is made because the breath of God makes it even colder. And the expanse of the waters is frozen. Uh, I guess this is how the English translation would talk about. Frozen in this case would be, the idea here is um, tightened together, tightened, or uh, constrained together. And so you think of it this way: when the water is tightened together, it hardens or solidifies. And thereby, this word frozen is used in the English, and I think it's a good word, right? It's a good word. And then the expanse of the water, uh, as the rain comes, as the seas comes, it becomes frozen. So this is a picture of, say, winter. When the north wind comes, and north wind, really, you think about it, when I was in Canada, uh, the north wind comes from the Arctic. And when it comes, it really brings down the temperature and everything freezes. And so the idea here is depicted that in a place where Job was staying, they have north winds from the hills in the north, and as it brings down, the lakes and the ponds and the bodies of water can actually freeze, and that would be the picture here. And they use a picture that this is the breath of God, that the neshama of God. God is blowing over the water, and then ice is formed, and then water is frozen. In verse 11, Elihu now turns his attention to the clouds. He loads the clouds with moisture, and he disperses the cloud of his lightning. Now, another difficult verse to translate, I would say. Uh, So we can actually say, um, even when it is clear, so let me just translate this. Even when it is clear, when clear skies appear, right? He troubles thick clouds, basically to form the cloud. So, in a way, this is not entirely wrong. It says, even when there is clear skies, God can form thick clouds, and this would be rain clouds. He spreads out his rain clouds. And this word here, uh, he disperses the cloud with, I guess, with lightning in a way where it is viewed from the ground, and people at Job's time would look up, and he says suddenly when it was bright sky, and then God can actually make clouds and becomes lightning and storm. And that's what it means. Verse 12. And then God can change its direction, turning around by his guidance. God moves it according to its circuits. And so this would be very important. This is the idea of circuits, turning around circuits. Now, of course, today when you look at the wind doesn't simply blow. There are winds that keeps blowing in specific directions at specific times of the year, and and Elihu seems to know this, and says this is what God is doing, that it may do whatever God commands it on the face of the inhabited land. Now, this word here, um, in verse 12, it's on the entire inhabited land. And so, everywhere where people live, they can see that wind comes and goes at very specific times in a very specific way. And these are wind circuits. Now, what is Elihu trying to point out is that even in nature, in such broad view, God is in control. God is in command because of the way he has designed the entire nature, the storms, the thunder, the lightning, the clouds, the rain, the snow, the ice, the wind. This is what is happening up to verse 12. In verse 13, whether for correction, this is punishment, whether for punishment or for his land, right? His land. What does that mean? The land belongs to God. God made this world, and God made the natural phenomena of storm, thunder, lightning, clouds, rain, snow, the frozen water. Everything is used for the land that God had made. And also, and this is something which you need to understand, and God can also use it for punishment. That is what verse 13 is speaking about. For goodness, he causes it to happen. So, verse 14, listen to this, Job. Stand and consider the wonders of God. So, continuing, Elihu is pointing very much to the greatness and grandeur, the handiwork of God, that God is far greater than any man to challenge him. That is very much what Elihu is trying to say. He continues, listen to what I have to say. Do you know how God establishes them and makes well, in verse 15, and makes his lightning shines through the clouds, basically explaining, asking Job to explain himself whether he understands this. How does God make all these happen? That he can establish uh, the storm, the clouds, the thunder, the lightning, all of these. How does God make them? And then in the clouds, there is lightning and it rains. Do you know about the hovering of the clouds, the wonders of one who is perfect in knowledge? Do you understand how clouds form and then spread it? Or the wonders? Now, the word wonders in verse 16 talks about the wonderful work. Wonderful work. The what else do you say? The miraculous work, right? The miraculous work of the one who has complete knowledge. Now, this idea of the one who has complete knowledge, the idea of complete knowledge is still in the same way as Job being complete, where God is said to have entire knowledge, uh, perfect knowledge, undefiled knowledge, whole knowledge. This word is the idea of uh, the idea of tamim, and describes God as the maker who can do miraculous work. When it says miraculous work, things that man cannot do, right? Things that man cannot do, God can. And so defines God, really. And he has the knowledge of doing all these things which we don't understand. Now that's the principle that's coming out of verse 16. Verse 17, your garments are warm when the land is still. Now, this idea of still is something which we need to retranslate. The picture here still is in quietness, right? In quietness, is calm because of, well, in this case, because of the south wind. The south wind brings breezes, right? And it is warm breezes. And by looking at some of these descriptions, we can actually, I guess we can actually infer the north wind, the south wind, both bringing cold and warm. It is not Israel. It's not Israel. Because Israel has warm from the east and wet from the west, and somewhat cold from the south. And so all these winds does not seem to tally with the land of Israel. So perhaps it is really very much in the original land of Abraham, uh, where they would be in the land of Ur, in the Chaldean. So I am of the opinion that this is not Israel. And so now in verse 18, Elihu is challenging Job. He says, this word is not can you. Uh, this word should read did you, not can you. Did you spread out the skies with God? Right? Did you spread out the skies with God? And this would be day four, right? Day four in Genesis. Did you spread out the skies with God? And for, I guess, for whatever we need to learn from this verse, the sky can be spreaded out, and it can be, how should we say, cast metal mirror, that it is strong as a cast metal mirror. uh and this cast metal mirror, in the past, it is not made of glass. If it's made of glass, it is termed as fragile in today's term. But this is cast metal, polished metal, and they use it as mirrors. And it is very strong. And so we look up the skies. God has made that in a way where the skies cannot be understood how it's formed. And so Elihu asked Job, did you do all this with God? And verse 19 is a challenge to Job. If you think you have done all these things, then teach us how we are to speak to him, because we cannot present uh, because of darkness. Now, what does this mean in 19? In verse 19, basically it's to say God is in a mystery, cannot be seen. It's always in darkness. And the idea of darkness here, in thick clouds. How are we to approach him and say something to him or present a case to him? So, Job, why don't you teach us what to do? And I guess you can say, uh, the idea of teach us here in the original word is to say, let us know. I think let us know instead of teach us. Let us know what we are to say to God. If you know all these things, why don't you tell us what to do? In a way, it is somewhat sarcastic, but I think if you think of it from a humble mind like Elihu and looking at the greatness of God, he is literally telling Job, all your complaints about God disregarding this world, and that even good people suffer, and trying to rationalize all this, saying that you are innocent and you don't deserve all these things. Do you know God the way he's supposed to be known? Were you there with God when he spreaded out the skies, when he made this world? That would be how Elihu is challenging Job. Verse 20. Shall it be told to him that I would speak, or should a man say that he would be swallowed up? Now, this idea of swallowed up, um, I guess there is a different way of expressing this swallowed up. The idea here is that in verse 20, that it is concealed, right? It's concealed. So it should be said, need it be told when or how I can speak? Or need a man tell that he would be concealing what he is said, right? Concealing his speech. And the idea that is shown here is Job, if you understand who God is in this form, in his creation, he being the creator, man has no right to speak out to God. Man should just keep quiet. Even you have lots to say, Job, just shut up. That would be the case in verse 20. In verse 21, Elihu continues to say this. Now, people do not see the light which is bright in the skies where the wind has passed and cleared them. Needs a little bit of retranslation. He says, thus they do not see the light which is bright in the skies. It's like up there in the sky, and the wind has passed and clears them away. So, what does that mean? So, take a look at this picture. This is the clouds out there, right? And these are storm clouds out there. A man is standing below looking up, and they don't see the light which is bright in the sky. Now, where is the bright light? Actually, what is above the storm is actually bright. What is below the storm is actually dark. And so they don't see the light until the storm is blown away. And once the cloud clears away by the wind, then the person can actually see the bright sky. Now, that is the picture in verse 21. And in verse 22, then from the north comes the golden, not splendor, the golden sunshine. And so this would be the north wind blowing. This is a north wind blowing. And it continues to say, around God is awesome majesty, awesome magnificence, awesome glory. Verse 22, or splendor. And the idea of splendor is the beauty, right, of God. Now, all of this is using the nature to describe God. And so, what is awesome? Now, this English word awesome is not well understood. This idea of awesome means astonishing, fearsome, right? Fearsome, frightening. And this is how the Hebrew expresses the wonder of God. And so the wonder of God is beautiful, it's splendor, it's got glory, it's magnificent, we call it majesty. But the idea of awesome is it's very scary. And this is a concept which Western minds cannot put together, because after the storm and you see the beautiful sky, the sun comes out, and the rainbow and the majesty of what's there, it is the words that Elihu is trying to describe, that this golden sunshine that comes after the north wind blows the storm clouds away. Man can see the bright light in the sky, That would be the glory of God, and it is awesome. It is frightening. And now we look at the last two verses. Now, these are the two last verses of Elihu. Because after this, Elihu doesn't appear in the book of Job anymore. And so now we look at verse 23. It says here, the Almighty. This is Shaddai, right? In verse 23. We cannot find the Almighty. And the idea of Almighty here is Shaddai, right here. Shaddai. We cannot find, and so the people look at God and calls him Shaddai and calls him El and also calls him Maker. And in this case, this is what natural man, when he looks at the greatness, the people actually know about Genesis. And we need to understand that all the discussion here in the book of Job assumes and infers that Elihu, the three friends, Job, and everybody around knows Genesis chapter 1 in some way. That it is God who made all these things. And he is described as the Almighty. You know, we cannot find him. The idea of finding him is to hold on to him. So we have not find him. He is exalted in power. And the idea of exalted, he is great in power. And the word power here is strength, right? In strength and in might. And that's what El literally means, the mighty one. And then the second line is important for us now to understand. He says he does not, well, in the translation here, it says he will not violate justice and abundant righteousness. And we need to translate this a little bit. He does not, it doesn't mean violate. Doesn't mean violate. The idea here is afflict. He does not afflict. He does not deal harshly. That's what it's trying to say. He does not afflict. He does not deal harshly. And then he says this word here, justice and abundant righteousness. He says, God will not afflict or deal harshly, and he has abundant kindness and justice. Now, these are very special words that Elihu has particularly chosen to describe God. That God is full of justice and he is full of, and this word is not really righteousness. You can say that this word here is um, much in justice and judgment. I guess you can say judgment and justice, right? In judgment, not so much righteousness. And so, as God judges and judges righteously, so God is just, God will act justly. All of these are descriptors of El, the Maker, Shaddai. Elihu is really closing his discourse by reminding Job that you can't just go and look for God. He is there in the greatness of his power and might, up there. And you notice they will always look up to God. And they are, and Elihu is very clear to say that God will not afflict or deal harshly with people. He has abundant judgment and justice. That God himself is just and he will deal justly with you, Job. And that would be the way that Elihu is trying to uh, encourage Job to net out God, that there is no need for you to complain about God and to say that he has abandoned humanity. God may not speak, but he is there. He is well aware and he will deal justly with everyone. And so in 24, it would be a very important closing. Therefore, and in therefore, uh, Lakain really means because of this, right? Because of this, because God is like that. And then the word here is people. This is man must fear God. And this mortal man must fear God. Enosh, or unashamed mortal man must fear him, God. And the idea of fear here is be afraid of God. Don't simply make decisions and say things. And then he says he does not regard any who are wise of heart. God does not have any preferential treatment for anyone who claims wisdom, right? Who claims to be wise. In a way, trying to rebuke Job, that at the end of the day, God doesn't have particular special treatment for you as opposed to other people. We just have to fear God. Now, this word here, as we end today, is somewhat important, that in times of great stress, turmoil, challenge, pain, suffering, in Job's case, Elihu's closing words is don't simply open your mouth when you don't understand. Don't blame God. God is still there. Whether he speaks or he doesn't show himself to you, God is still there. We are nobody. We are his creatures. He has shown us all these great and mighty things: the storm, the clouds, the thunder, the rain, the snow, the breath of God, the freezing of the waters. And then God will bring out his splendor with the sun and the clear skies after the storm. The wind is according to the design of God. We are but his creatures. So fear him. He is Shaddai. He is Shaddai. He is the Almighty. He is the one who created the world. He made the world in 6 days and he said, enough on the seventh day. That's what it means by Shaddai. He is the creator God. So at the end of the day, every mortal man should fear him. And that is the closing words of Elihu. Also, encouragement to Job. To anyone who is suffering at the end of the day, it's not about rationalizing that will make things go away. God is communicating through some of these events as well. And when we don't understand, it doesn't mean he does not exist. We don't understand the storm, the clouds, the lightning, the thunder, and yet God is there. When you see the beautiful sun, the beautiful sky after the storm, then you would know the greatness and awesomeness of the splendor of God. At this time, Job is in a storm. The day is dark. The clouds are thick. It is very stormy, and he doesn't understand. And that is what Elihu is using as a picture. Very poetically, he tells Job, I understand. But when you see all these things, God is still there. Fear him. He doesn't care whether you say you are wise or not, because everyone will stand before God and be judged. And so God is just, and God will judge justly because he is a just God. He made us all, and so we ought to fear him. And with this, we come to the end of chapter 37, which is also the last we see and hear of Elihu. And from here on, we also do not have a rebuttal by Job, which implies that Job is now seized. His mouth is shut. He is now in agreement with Elihu, and he has no reply. Tomorrow, when we get into chapter 38, then we will see in a few chapters what does God have to say. And with this, we come to the end of our session today.